back again to our next lesson, dealing with, in this class, the deity of the Messiah in the Tenach. Here in this lesson, we're going to look at a couple of passages that deal with the Messiah's being. So far, we've learned that there is a Jewish belief about the Messiah. The Messiah means anointed one. The core Jewish belief about the Messiah is that he would not be God, that Jesus claimed to speak God's words and that he was one with God. He claimed to be the Messiah, and Jesus certainly claimed to be God. We've looked at passages from the Old Testament about the Messiah's birth and about the Messiah's sonship that show that the Messiah has to be God, that it's not just a man, it can't be just a man. What we will learn in this class is a couple of different passages that talk about the Messiah's being, that show the Messiah has to be God. He has to be, or else he is not the Messiah. Two passages that detail the Messiah's being. The first one is from Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 5 and 6. And it says this, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name, whereby he shall be called, the Lord our righteousness." Now this is a very, very amazing passage. As you can see there, I've highlighted a couple of different phrases. God says that I will raise unto David a righteous branch. This branch is spoken of a couple different times in the Hebrew Bible, and it is a messianic term, the branch. It's in reference to the son of David, the Messiah, and a king. This is the same king that we read in the previous lesson about God saying, "Yet I have set my king upon my holy hill of Zion." This is the Messiah, this is the king. This is his name, whereby he shall be called, the Lord our righteousness. One of the Messiah's names would be Jehovah Tzadiknu. Jehovah Tzadiknu. What's so interesting about this name? Well, according to a number of rabbinical sources, once again, I mentioned this before, there's a number of sources in the Talmud and so on that talk about, in Jewish commentaries, that talk about the Messiah in a way that is not talked about today in Jewish circles. There has been a bias that is developed against Jesus. There's been a bias that's been developed against certain passages of the Hebrew Scriptures that Christians have used to be able to show that Jesus is the Messiah, and there's been a knee-jerk reaction away from accepting that those passages are even referring to the Messiah, such as Isaiah 53. Here, in this passage, Midrash Mishlei 19:21, this is from the Jewish commentary, Rabbi Huna counted amongst the 7 names of the Messiah also Jehovah Tzidkenu. Jehovah Tzidkenu. What's interesting about this, the Lord our righteousness, is that the first part of that name is Jehovah. This is something that is kind of odd to the Jewish belief system, that the Messiah would have the unpronounceable name of God himself. Another Midrash, Tehillim 21:2, from the Jewish commentary, God nameth also the King Messiah with his own name. This was accepted, that this passage was referring to the Messiah, and that it is an amazingly unique instance where God gives not just the word God, but his name, Jehovah, to the Messiah. Jehovah is his Messiah's name. For it is written, this is the name whereby he shall be called, Jehovah Tzidkenu. Jehovah Tzidkenu, the Lord our righteousness. Psalm 83:18, interestingly, says this, that men may know that thou whose name alone is Jehovah art the most high over all the earth. According to Psalm 83, only God's name is Jehovah. If no one else's name is Jehovah, and only God is Jehovah, but the Messiah's name is Jehovah, there's only one logical conclusion. It has to mean that the Messiah has to be God, that the Messiah is Jehovah in human flesh. We've looked at Jeremiah 23, verses 5 and 6. Jehovah Tzidkenu. The Messiah is the Son of David. The Messiah is the branch. The Messiah is the King. The Messiah's name is Jehovah. This is something that we cannot overlook. This is something that the Jewish people, as hard as it may be, they cannot look past this. They should not be able to look past this. That the Messiah's name, one of his many names that he has given in the Hebrew Scriptures, is Jehovah, our righteousness. Unbelievable. The ancient rabbis recognized this. Only God's name is Jehovah. The Messiah has to be God. He has to be. This should not be a surprise to Jewish people based on their scriptures. They should be able to see that the Messiah was expected to be God. Now, one more passage mainly, in Zechariah chapter 3. This deals with the Messiah having God's glory. For behold, from Zechariah 3:8, for behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch. This is once again the same branch mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 23 in verse 5, where it talks about the man whose name is the branch, the Messiah, the King. I will raise unto David a righteous branch. This is him. This is speaking of the Messiah. Behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch. This is speaking of the Messiah. Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, and this is from Zechariah chapter 6, verse 12. Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall grow up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne. The Messiah here is going to have the glory of God. This is very interesting when you compare this with a couple of passages from the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 8 says, I am the Lord, I am Jehovah, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another. Neither my praise to graven images. God, Jehovah himself, says, I will not give my glory to anyone else. Nobody is going to have my glory but me, Jehovah. Isaiah 48:11 says, for my own sake, even for my own sake will I do it. For how should my name be polluted? And I will not give my glory unto another. If you put these passages together, you realize an incredible truth, that the Messiah is Jehovah in human flesh. Zechariah 3:8, the Messiah will clearly have God's glory. Isaiah says that God says he will not give his glory to anybody else. If God will clearly not give his glory to another, the Messiah has to be God himself. Once again, so far we've viewed a couple of different passages that look into the Hebrew Scriptures, the Jewish Bible, the Tenach, what we call the Old Testament. We've looked into a couple of these passages that deal with the Messiah being God. The next class, we'll look at two more passages. And these passages deal primarily with the aspect of the Messiah's body. But it's amazing to note, in what we've seen here in this lesson today, is that the Messiah will have Jehovah's name. He has God's name. He has the Lord's name. And he also has the Lord's glory. He has Jehovah's glory. Neither of these things would God give to anybody else. The Messiah absolutely has to be God. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next class. Shalom.